3 different golf clubs and I'm going to tell you how we're going to hit them better, because I would imagine these 3 we probably find the hardest to hit, and we're not doing what we need to do in regards to setup and how we actually approach the golf ball. Let's find out how you're going to do this in that lesson. So as we get the driver, the 3-wood and the hybrid out, I would imagine these are the clubs, like I say, that we probably don't hit our best sometimes. We would find that maybe I top all of them, I get a little bit slicey, and I just don't strike them the way I want to. And a lot of problems stem from the setup. When I watch a lot of golfers, when I'm out playing with friends and stuff, I don't see a lot of changes from when they get from driver even down towards the hybrid. They're just doing the same thing and wondering why it's not working. So we've got to understand how we're actually meant to address them and how we're actually meant to hit them. So we're going to start with the driver, the most obvious one, as we go through this lesson. And the tips I'm talking about here today are all to do with your setup and all to do with your ball position. So what I find for a lot of golfers is that ball position and the setup don't change from club to club. Now with driver, what we want to do, we want to influence an angle of attack, so the way the golf club's approaching the golf ball, that is positive. So we want to hit up on it. And what I see a lot of golfers do is they might have the tee height correct, but then all of a sudden they're stood to it like they would do a 7-iron, and we would see like that there's not much change in their body position from a 7-iron, and ultimately doesn't lead to good shots. So what we need to make sure when we want to get this angle of attack that's up with a driver, we need to make sure firstly that our ball position is correct. There's not much loft on this club, 9.5 degrees, so I've got to make sure that I'm hitting it on the up and actually encouraging a little bit more loft into the shot. So the first thing is getting this ball right, and as you can see there, what I've done is align my lead foot, so as a right-handed golfer I've aimed that one firstly. So what I've done here is I've put it right in line with my toes, and then I just flare it out ever so slightly. So as we can see, as I actually put the club into the ball now, this ball is aligned more into sort of like my shin here, runs through my foot. What I've not done is put it where I would do with a 7-iron. I want to try and see that it's more here, running through that foot up to my shin, so I've got the correct ball position. From there then, I would create a few tilts in my setup, and the main aim for me as I'm coming with my driver is to feel like the club would bottom out early. I don't want it to touch the ground, but I would feel like it's lowest here, so then as it gets to the ball, it's now ascending up and sweeping the ball up into the air. What I don't want to be doing is feeling like as I come, I'm hitting down at the golf ball, almost hitting down into the ground here, taking a divot and working across it. I want to feel that I'm actually sending it up into the air as I go through. So really simple, ball here, create those tilts. From there then, wide takeaway and feel like we sweep up. Imagine just the sole of your golf club here. So this part of the driver, I'm going to feel like that is brushing the tee peg as I go through it. So ball position, tilt, and then get this sweeping feeling. So as I go into it, I'm here. On the up, as we can see here, if you're coming close, because I've actually hit up on this golf ball here, the tee peg is still in place. I've not hit down and I've not broken my tee peg, and that is one aim we want to try and do. When you're with your driver, try and see if you can leave the tee peg in the ground and feel like you're sweeping up on it as you go through. Let's take a look at the hybrids and the fairways to see how we'd change with those. So with these 2 clubs, this is where we would start to see the problems arising. I would imagine that as a golfer watching this now, you get some top shots, you get some thin shots, you get the divot before the golf ball with these 2 when they're on the ground. It's probably because you're actually trying to do what we've just gone through with the driver when you've got one of these in hand. So what I talk about here now, when I talk it through with the hybrid club, it goes for the fairway as well. So the difference in this lesson is all to do with angle of attack, and what we're trying to do is change it from an upwards angle of attack with the driver. When we get into our fairways, when we get into our hybrids, we want to see that we've actually got a descending angle of attack, so we're going to hit down on it. I'm not going to take the divot like I would do when I have a pitching wedge in hand, but what I'm going to do is take a tiny little divot as I go through. So again, a couple of setup changes are going to help that. And as I go through and see a lot of players again, we get the hybrid out, we get that 3-wood out, and it's for our second shot on that par 4. We've hit a great drive, and then next thing you know, it's bumbling along the ground just in front of us. Feels like a wasted drive. All because, as I stand to it, again, the 7-iron setup's out. Just play the ball in the middle, everything will be okay. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. What we need to see is that we're still actually going to play this golf ball more towards the front of our stance. So we had driver where it was in line with our lead foot here. What we're going to do is move this foot about a club head here, as we see there. So the ball's now about a club head behind my lead foot. I've got my driver, then I've got my hybrid. So I stand to it. From there then, I've still got this ball fairly far forwards compared to the middle of my stance. But what I now want to do, instead of feeling like I'm sweeping the golf ball up, I want to imagine just after the golf ball here, if there was a little pocket of chalk here, I want to feel like I would sweep the chalk off the ground. So notice there, as I'm just doing this, that divot's just coming just after the golf ball. It's not a big divot, it's just a grazing of the sole on the ground, and I'm just getting that little graze as I go through. So we've got to make sure that the ball position is correct. Then from there, I've got to try and feel like I'm just sweeping the ground afterwards when I get into my fairways and my hybrids. If you're stood there trying to help it up into the air, chances are it's going to go along the ground. So good setup, find that that ball's about 1 inch to 2 inches behind that lead foot, and then as we go through, just feel that I'm going to take a little bit of divot as I go after it. So good setup, sweep that turf after the golf ball. Now I actually picked that one a little bit too cleanly and got the bottom of the golf ball, hence why we didn't see the launch I want. So if I just hit another one here and try and just get a little bit of a divot this time, I should see that the ball pops up a tiny bit more. So ball position's correct. I've got the idea that I'm going to take my tiny divot, whether it's a 7-wood, a 5-wood, a 3 hybrid, and there a tiny little brush of the turf, and we can see that that ball has launched a lot higher and I've got my desired flight. So a real simple lesson, but one I think that a lot of people are making mistakes on. Make sure you've got that ball in the right spot, and make sure that when we've got the fairways and the hybrids out, we're trying to take the divot. When we've got the driver out, let's try and sweep it off the tee and leave the tee in the ground. If we can do that, we're going to see that we're hitting the golf ball better. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. If you have, hit that subscribe button down below. It's totally free to do. I want you to get better at the game. Do it by hitting there. See you in your next lesson.